Well, hi, everybody. I'm Don Stewart, and welcome to our second edition of Breaking News for this Wednesday, the second day of April, 2025. In the last few hours, we've had some really fascinating stories come across the wire since we talked to you this morning, so let's get right to them. First of all, the NATO allies have already pledged over $21 billion in aid to Ukraine in 2025. In the first 3 months, $21 billion. And we'll talk about what that means. Trump said he is considering an Iranian offer of indirect nuclear talks. His advisors are split on this. He has some advisors that think they can actually make a deal with Iran, the same ones that think they can make a deal with Hamas, and this is beyond ridiculous, but we'll talk about that. Does Iran hope Russia can save it from U.S. strikes? This is a really fascinating story. There seems to be some work going on between Iran and Russia to try and keep the U.S. from doing any type of attack on Iran's nuclear facility. So we'll look at that. And then some very good news. A French Court of Appeals has decided to look at the Le Pen election ban case by next year. In other words, there was a chance that the next election she should run. Like we said, she had on all the polls, she had the most popularity of any of the candidates. And then once this ruling came out from this leftist judge there in France, her population just skyrocketed. But again, the bottom line was because of some things she supposedly did, which other candidates have done in the past, but no one has ever received the same type of penalty. They wanted to ban her from running for president of France. And like we said the last time, she got 1.6 million more votes than the next candidate. But because these two parties, Macron and the far leftist, uber leftist party, got together to form a government, the will of the people again was thwarted. So anyway, this is a great story. We'll look at that. And then finally, China updates its totalitarian social credit system to grade even local governments. It's getting worse and worse there, but it's a sign of the times. It's a sign of what the world's going towards with respect to grading its people, the so-called social credit system. And the totalitarian rule, just like you have an unelected judge there in France telling the main presidential candidate she can't run. Sounds familiar with the United States, right? With Donald Trump. And so we've got that kind of stuff going on in our world today. So we're going to look at it because these stories are really fascinating. Okay, here's the first one. NATO allies have pledged over $21 billion in aid to Ukraine in 2025. That's from Reuters. NATO allies have pledged more than 20 billion euros or 21.5 billion, $21.65 billion in military support for Ukraine in the first 3 months of the year. NATO Secretary General Mark Rutte said on Wednesday. Foreign ministers from the alliance met in Brussels on Thursday and Friday to discuss further support for Ukraine against Russia's 3-year-old invasion. Okay, so if Ukraine keeps getting all this money, they really have no reason to negotiate a peace as long as the money keeps flowing in, right? And Russia, on the other hand, doesn't need to negotiate since they're winning the war on the ground. We had an excellent story the other day. We didn't get a chance to get to it about how Russia's winning on all fronts on the battle. But if Ukraine keeps getting the money, they don't seem to have any motivation to make any deal either. So it's really a mess here. So it looks like a lose-lose for the time being. And this thing's going to drag on and on and on. So we'll keep you posted on that. Because remember, Russia eventually has to get out of this war with Ukraine one way or another, either through a ceasefire or just a total victory, so they can eventually set their sights on the Middle East, as the Bible says they will in the last days. Now, here's another weird story. Trump said considering Iranian offer of indirect talks, advisors are still split on the matter. This is from the Times of Israel. He actually has advisors that think they can work out a deal with Iran, the same advisors that think they can work out a deal with Hamas, and of course, where they've got nothing along this line. Okay, here's the story. White House hasn't ruled out Omani mediation, though it prefers direct talks. Meanwhile, the U.S. is building up forces to establish deterrence, option to strike Iran if diplomacy fails. But the U.S. supposedly, according to this story from Times of Israel, is seriously considering Iran's proposal for indirect nuclear talks, while also significantly increasing American forces in the Middle East, in case U.S. President Donald Trump chooses to conduct military strikes on the nuclear sites. This is a report that came out today. As we've mentioned, they've recently moved stealth bombers and an additional aircraft carrier into the Middle East and Indian Ocean in striking distance with both Yemen and Iran, where American jets have been targeting the Houthis, and of course, they could target Iran itself. The U.S. president over the weekend received Iran's formal response to his letters from Axios, citing one U.S. official who said, White House believes direct negotiations have a greater chance of success, but hasn't ruled out indirect talks. So he actually has advisors that are telling him, uh, it's better if we could have a direct talk with Iran, but the indirect talks may get us a deal eventually with Iran also. These people have no clue. That's why the Israeli sites 201, as we've been quoting in the last week or so, all getting on Witkoff as the most incompetent, uneducated, the wrong person for the job, not understanding the Middle East, not understanding what's going on, or not understanding these people don't want to deal. They don't want to negotiate. They want to destroy Israel, and that's their main goal. That's the goal with Iran. They believe they're divinely inspired to do this, and so why these guys still want to negotiate is beyond me. We'll see how long it lasts because you can't have all these stealth bombers, all these aircraft carriers in the region forever. Something has to give sooner rather than later. So we'll see. Now, this next story is also a little bit befuddling. It's from the Jerusalem Post. Does Iran hope Russia can save it from the U.S. strikes? Moscow may think that it can link a Ukraine deal to a deal that will also help Iran. And that's something strange. Russian Deputy Foreign Minister Sergei Rabkov has criticized threats by the U.S. to bomb Iran, according to the Islamic Republic News Agency, RINA, Iran's official news agency, today on Wednesday. His remarks appear to be part of an Iranian message to deter any U.S. action. In recent days, Iranian messaging has increased with threats against U.S. forces in the Gulf and comments that indicate Iran might choose to develop a nuclear weapon. We had that story yesterday if it is attacked. Iran appears to hope Russia might be able to help prevent U.S. strikes since Russia is in discussions with the U.S. about a possible Ukraine ceasefire, and Saudi Arabia has also hosted the talks. So the idea is they'll do some deal with both Ukraine and Iran to keep not only a peace, some type of peace deal with Ukraine, but also to keep Iran from being attacked. Because Russia and Iran are, hand in glove working together, as we know they would, because in the last days, the Bible says the final invasion that'll take place against, next to the final one, before the campaign of Armageddon, the Ezekiel 38-39 invasion will be led by Russia, but also have Iran as its main surrogate there. And so they will be working together, something that, again, never has happened in the past, but is happening right now. So we'll see about this. Will this stop the attack, the possible attack against Iran from the United States? Well, we'll have to wait and see. Now, next story is very good news. There's some Breitbart. French Court of Appeal to decide on the Le Pen election ban case by next year. And here's the secondary headline. 1 in 5 EU lawmakers broke the same rule. In other words, the rule she supposedly broke that got her in trouble. 20% of the European lawmakers do the same thing. Guess what? Almost everyone's avoided punishment except her. Why? Because she represents a populist view, the will of the people to overthrow, what the leftists are doing there in France, the terrible migrant, crisis that they have. And she and her party is, against that, like Geert Wilders there in the Netherlands and other ones, Germany. And problem is these parties are gaining popularity, but we saw in Romania, the party there that had the popularity there of doing that. What happened? Well, the first election round, they won. So the powers that be said, we got to throw out the results. This isn't right. This is, Russia intervening and lying about things. And so we got to do it over again because we didn't get the results we wanted. So anyway, this is a good news. She's going to be her possibility of next president of France in 2027 was given a boost by the Paris Court of Appeal, said it will look to decide whether to uphold or scrap a ban on her from the elections next year. In a press release, the Paris court said it will decide by summer of 2026 on Marine Le Pen's appeal against the ruling this week to ban her from standing in any election for the next 5 years over a controversial embezzlement conviction over EU funds during her time as member of the European Parliament. It's one of these rules there she supposedly broke that's written in such a fuzzy way that a lot of, again, political parties have done what she did, but she is the one that gets punished for it, of course, because why? Because she's the popular one. She's a populist point of view. And then people don't like that because it sounds like Donald Trump here in America. So again, while other politicians in France have faced similar bans from running for office after being convicted of similar offenses, none have been on the scale of Marine Le Pen's case, giving her status as the clear front runner to become the country's next president. So that's what they're trying to do. Here's how we stop you. We can't do it at the ballot box. We'll just find some um, charge to bring up, haul you in front of the court, get some leftist judge to declare that you're ineligible, and that takes care of that. And it sounds familiar, doesn't it, with what's happened here in America? Now, this fifth headline, we're also dealing with totalitarianism here, but here's the worst of the worst. But unfortunately, this is kind of trickling down to other countries. China updates totalitarian social credit system to grade local governments. It's a Breitbart story. The government of China debuted an onerous list of 23 new measures this week intended to strengthen the pervasiveness of its social credit system to regulate its citizens' behavior. These measures include provision to strengthen the Chinese government control over, quote, all types of entities. In other words, everything about your life and your business life, they're going to be in control, said the state-run Xinhua news agency. The Hong Kong newspaper South China Morning Post noted that among the several entities, the updated guidelines intend to more closely regulate the local governments within China. All right. Now, here's a little explanation of the social credit system. It's a program in which the government assigns a score to every individual in the country based on the value that that person has in the eyes of the Communist Party. Billions of people, as well as foreign and domestic companies, receive a social credit score from the government that can either expand their privileges in the country or limit their access to social services, travel, banking, and other action. The Chinese government debuted the system, debuted it in 2018, and loudly have boasted of its success in banning individuals with bad credit from traveling, prompting condemnation and horror in the West. And they've slowly expanded the system to include corporations. Beijing reserves the ability to grant to citizens a bad social credit score for almost any reason, for committing grave crimes such as littering, to criticizing the Communist Party, or to believing in any religion. If you believe in any religion in China, that kills your social credit score. You're disallowed to travel to certain areas, to certain privileges, etc. Now, there was an interesting comment. It's a Breitbart story from someone that responded to this. I'm going to read you what they said. I think it's fascinating, and it's true. We've talked about this before. We have friends who lived in China for years. They told us, and news reports confirm, that the CCP, Chinese Communist Party, controls every uppercase letters aspect of everyday life of every one of their people. Everyone has a cell phone and a signed barcode identifier. Open the front door of your home, scan the code. Ride a bus, scan the code. Leave the bus, scan the code. Enter a store, scan the code. Buy groceries, scan the code. Leave the store, scan the code. Enter a place of business, scan the code. Exit a place of business, scan the code. Get back on the bus, scan the code. Enter your home, scan the code. All our permissions are based on your personal credit score, and all permissions are revocable. They can be revoked, in other words. During the during COVID, and this is a terrible story, we reported this years ago, the Chinese Communist Party, starting in Wuhan and then in Shanghai, to stop the spread of the disease by the simple expedient of electronically locking the doors. Hundreds of thousands of people were locked in their homes where they starved to death. It was reported by the end of the calendar year 2020, China had 100 million fewer cell phones than in calendar year 2019. Everyone in China has a cell phone, and that is what gets you into all these places. 100 million less than from one year to the next. Why? China starved these people to death. That's the totalitarian control that's there, and that's what other countries are trying to put in place with these unelected judges in the United States and France and other places making decisions from the bench, these far-left judges against the will of the people. And it fits perfectly with what we've talked about before in Daniel chapter 2, that in the last days, the revived Roman Empire will look like iron mixed with clay. They do not adhere. This 10-nation confederation basically will be ruled by the elite, the haves, and the have-nots will have to follow them. Their traditions, their morals, their religion, etc., will be put in the background because they have to be part of the greater greater good, this final federation, and of course, eventually be run by the final Antichrist and his cohort, the false prophet, to the place where there'll be worldwide domination of these individuals with respect to everyone, where they can buy or sell. Now, again, we deal with this in our book, The Final Antichrist. It's one of the free books we have on our, one of the 65 free books we have on our website, Educating Our World, one of the 12 books on Bible prophecy. So please check it out, along with 25 signs. We're near the end in the other books that we've written. And so these are some fascinating stories. We'll have to follow them, see where they go. But some really interesting things about, where the war in Ukraine's going, whether there'll be an attack on the facilities there, nuclear facilities in Iran, what will happen in France with the election, et cetera, et cetera. So never a dull moment here, is there? I'm Don Stewart. Thanks for watching. And thanks for telling others about this ministry we have. We've got a lot of new people every day signing on. We welcome you. Again, if you're new, suggest that you can maybe want to watch some of the past breaking news, at least for the last week or so. And if you don't want to watch, we have a written summary every time in our, not only the YouTube page, but in our app. We do have an app, EOW with Don Stewart. It's free from both the app stores, from the, the Apple one, or for the Android one, or our website, Educating Our World. You can get all the information there. All right. Until next time, as always, may the Lord richly, richly bless.